you had one job, was to redact our names, to respect our privacy, but yet you carefully took the time to redact all these powerful, rich men. I think we all realize now, oh, you guys really wanted to silence us. And you thought that you could scare us by putting our names out there. And to be honest with you, we've been through worse.
There's a victim list that was released. It's called Victim List.
Client list.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, and it had a list of victims.
It was shown, I think, a couple of times in the hearing.
One was redacted. That makes no sense. This is a list of victims. That's intentional.
You just heard victims of Jeffrey Epstein not so subtly suggest that Pam Bondi's Department of Justice deliberately disclosed their names in order to intimidate them. Now, while it's possible that you could chalk it up to just stupidity or sloppiness, I think that they have a point. I think these women aren't crazy to think that this was done on purpose at the behest of powerful men who want nothing more than to silence their accusers. And the way that they do that is by getting their names. So in disclosing their names, Pam Bondi or whoever made those redactions, they're helping these men go after their accusers. And the reason why this is a possibility is because the men who have been named in the Epstein files, like Alan Dershowitz, former attorney of Epstein, who's been named multiple times in the Epstein files, basically said out in the open that he has a right to know the name of his accuser.
Well, you look at this paper that has been reproduced and sent by the Justice Department. It's called Prominent Names. And it's a list of prominent people who have been accused. Every single name of every accuser has been blacked out. So, for example, let's turn to me. It says blank, 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 blacked out, stated she gave him a massage on Epstein's plane, parenthesis, not a minor. So let's understand that. This is an adult. A woman who was on Epstein's plane, she says, I was never on an Epstein plane with a young woman.
Right.
I never got a massage. This is total defamation, a total lie, but I can't disprove it because they won't give me her name. That's McCarthyism. Why are we allowing accusations without the names of the accusers? For example, in my case, it's an adult woman. We don't know whether she's a victim. We don't know whether she's a perpetrator. We don't know whether she's a co-conspirator. Why do you hide her name and produce the name of the people who are accused? That's guilt by accusation. That's guilt by association. It's McCarthyism. It's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It has to stop.
So he's implying that all of Epstein's potential co-conspirators are innocent victims of some McCarthyist witch hunt. Therefore, accusations against them are tantamount to defamation, possibly. And that is a really ironic claim for him, of all people, to make, given how he said this 6 years ago about one of Epstein's now deceased victims, Virginia Giuffre.
I can tell you she is still a prostitute. She is selling false stories now for money about me.
Do you have any concern calling her a prostitute when she was victimized at such a young age by this wealthy man?
She was not victimized. She made her own decisions in life.
But at the age of 15, some would say that's a little young and that she was taken advantage of.
I'm talking about the age of 19. Look, that's between her and the federal government and the people that she claims victimized her.
He called the victim of child rape a prostitute. That's the word he chose to go with. Now, aside from that being just obviously disgusting, that seems like defamation to me. But Virginia Giuffre did end up suing Alan Dershowitz for defamation, not necessarily because of that comment, but he then countersued her in 2019 for intentional infliction of emotional distress over her accusation that Epstein had trafficked her to Dershowitz. And he implied once again that it was some kind of anti-rich witch hunt. CNN reports Dershowitz alleges Giuffre and her lawyers targeted wealthy Epstein associates, including Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder and CEO of L Brands and owner of Victoria's Secret. According to the lawsuit, David Bowes personally met with Wexner's lawyer in what Wexner's lawyer and wife both described as a shakedown. Fast forward to 2026, and we now know that Wexner has been named in the unredacted Epstein files as a co-conspirator. So in retrospect, Dershowitz was a bit hyperbolic, I guess we'll say, to call it a shakedown back then, just like he's a wee bit hyperbolic to say it's some form of new McCarthyism now. But in all fairness to Dershowitz, Virginia did drop the allegations against him in 2022 and said that she may have made a mistake in identifying him as the man that had sex with her 6 times. And earlier that year, she also reached a settlement with Prince Andrew. Now, that's not necessarily proof of innocence per se. Litigation is expensive and powerful people have the resources to drag these things out, whereas people with less resources don't. And thus, the people with less power have an incentive to settle as soon as possible. Nobody knows for sure, though, to be clear regarding this case. Maybe she genuinely did make a mistake in identifying Alan Dershowitz. That could be true. Maybe Casey Tron really did violate Ethan Klein's copyright, and the hostage video that she was forced to release admitting it as part of their settlement was proof that Ethan Klein was right all along. Who's to say in these kinds of things, right? But the point I'm trying to make is that we have an unbalanced justice system where victory, more often than not, hinges on who has more money. That creates a power imbalance, and it's obviously a problem. And Dershowitz will have to forgive me because I don't believe a word he fucking says, because something he said in that hysterical rant caught my eye.
I never got a mistake.
He never had a massage, he says. Well, let's look at a different portion of that 6-year-old news report that we watched earlier where he called Virginia a prostitute.
Dershowitz did say he once received a massage at Epstein's mansion, but from an adult woman.
I kept my underwear on during the massage. I don't like massages particularly.
That's weird. I thought that he said he never had a massage. Interesting. Now, look, it's possible that he meant he's never gotten a massage from an underage girl, but it still feels like he's kind of moving the goalposts. But the point in going down the Alan Dershowitz rabbit hole is to highlight why the DOJ and or the FBI might have had a reason to release their names to the public in the first place. Presumably, releasing the victims' names allows powerful men that they're trying to protect to go after the victims with frivolous defamation lawsuits that influences them to shut the fuck up. And to go back to Virginia Giuffre in particular, she was one of Jeffrey Epstein's most outspoken victims who reportedly died by suicide back in 2025, even though she emphatically stated in a 2019 tweet, quote, "I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me for the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted." On top of that, her father said that there's no way she committed suicide, and her attorney called for an investigation into her death, although her attorney later clarified that they weren't trying to insinuate that her death was suspicious. But even if there isn't enough evidence to support the worst possible conclusion in Giuffre's case, still, they may face harassment and intimidation from powerful men who want to ruin them and silence them, hence why you have to protect their identities. Having said that, we may never learn the truth about what happened to Giuffre and other Epstein victims because the Justice Department is going out of their way to protect the elites who were implicated in these crimes. And Representative Ted Lieu brought up one of the unresolved cases that is just sitting on Pam Bondi's desk that she's doing nothing about. And you're going to see her perjure herself here as well. Just take a look at this clip. This clip has a lot going on, but we'll unpack it when we come back. This is fucking insane to me.
Former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I'm going to claim my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation. This is
time
belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you. Here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop the limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately.
My God, so there's a lot that happened in that clip, but let's just pick it apart piece by piece. First, a lawmaker just sounded the alarm before the entire country about a potential victim who had her head blown off after she accused Trump and Epstein of rape. And even though officers at the scene said there's no way that would have been a suicide, there was never an investigation. Not to mention, the Attorney General knows about this potential crime, but is choosing to not investigate this potential crime. In fact, she's deflecting from Trump's potential criminality, ironically, by accusing everyone else who wants the president to be investigated of deflecting from all of the good that he's done. So, like, if she's willing to perjure herself in order to shield powerful men from accountability, the question is, what else is she willing to do? It goes back to the claim from Epstein's victims that their names were unredacted on purpose. I agree with them. But Pam Bondi is also doing other conspicuous things that leads me to think that she's actively trying to stop lawmakers from getting to the truth at the behest of powerful men. Because during that same testimony, Robert Schmidt of Getty snapped this picture, and you can see that Pam Bondi had printed out Pramila Jayapal's search history from when she was looking through the unredacted Epstein files at the DOJ's computers. And this confirms that they were monitoring the activity of lawmakers. But it wasn't just Jayapal. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have confirmed that the same thing happened to them when they were looking through the unredacted Epstein files at the DOJ.
You know, Congressman Jayapal was the only person?
We have reason to believe that it was happening to everybody who went over there, that they were monitoring everybody's computer searches.
I'm pretty tech savvy. I played around with the system. They're tracking every file that we open. And when we open it, they're tracking everything. And you can see the way that they're tracking you when you're logged in if you know where to look, like I do.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So they give each of us a login with their name attached to it. And every single file that we open, regardless of if we even read it, every single file that we open, that file is tagged with our name. So they get the search history and the files that we opened. Everything.
So the Department of Justice is literally surveilling lawmakers when they access the unredacted Epstein files. Why? Nobody knows. Maybe they're trying to make sure members of Congress don't discover any threads that lead back to Trump or other powerful people who may be associated with Trump. Maybe they're colluding with these powerful people. Maybe it's just that they're super nosy and they want to see what they're looking at. Nobody knows. But based on what we've seen, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that it's part of their ongoing effort to stop us from getting closer to the truth. And Jayapal is now calling for an investigation, rightfully so, because this is obviously unacceptable, if not outright illegal.
Mike Johnson did say publicly that he thought it was unacceptable. Other Republicans have said that they don't think it's appropriate. I've come to not expect anything from this Republican Party, frankly, but I would hope that many of the Republicans that I've worked with on surveillance and privacy issues, on FISA, on so many other things, would speak up and say this is absolutely inappropriate. It has to stop. And the Department of Justice has to be held accountable. We need an investigation. What information did they collect? Why were they collecting it? How were they going to use it? Why was it in her binder? These are all questions that the American people deserve to have answered.
Yeah, so something very ominous is happening. We're witnessing the Department of Justice and the FBI engage in a cover-up so blatant that they're willing to break the law and perjure themselves in front of all of us just to stop the truth from getting out. Which begs the question, what else and who else is in those files? Even lawmakers seem worried about naming names that they're seeing because what they're seeing are the names of the most powerful people in the world who have more power and wealth than them. And this was confirmed again by Nancy Mace. You know, not necessarily the most credible person. Nonetheless, what she says here is obviously reasonable.
You would be shocked, Pierce, that some of the names that I have seen that came across the DOJ in emails that the DOJ is protecting. And we're talking about people on both sides of the aisle. We're talking about famous people, rich people, people in power, prime ministers, former presidents, et cetera, media personalities. that are named in these files. And that's why I say this is going to go down as the greatest cover-up, one of the greatest cover-ups in American history. And I don't believe the girls are actually going to see justice, which is why it's going to be incumbent upon people like Democrat Ro Khanna, Republican Thomas Massie. I'm a Republican myself who's willing to name some of those names in our committee work, on the floor of the House, whatever it takes, because this kind of thing cannot continue to go on.
Now, if you're wondering why she won't just name names right there, it goes back to the conversation that we had at the beginning of this video. She could open herself up to defamation lawsuits, but the reason why she said that it needs to be brought to the House floor is because members of Congress actually have immunity from defamation for anything that they say on the House floor. It's why both Ro Khanna and Massie didn't say anything to reporters after they discovered the names of the 6 co-conspirators. They were saying, hey, we found 6 names, but they waited until they were on the House floor to say those names because they're presumably dealing with even more people who are far more powerful than the names that they've already discovered, so they cannot speak until they have at least some form of protection. But I will say that the silver lining is that the people at the DOJ and FBI who are responsible for the cover-up might be some of the stupidest people in the world, because Pam Bondi's unhinged testimony on Wednesday was such a bad look that even Republicans criticized her for it. And it was so embarrassing that Trump had to release this long-ass post on Truth Social defending her performance as fantastic when everybody knows that it was a fucking shit show. But it doesn't matter that everyone else who watched it thought that she made a fool of herself, or that it might even end in her impeachment when Democrats take back the House. All that matters is that she did exactly what was expected of her for the audience of one that she was performing for. Donald J. Trump. She'll happily apply the clown makeup and perjure herself in front of the world and permanently tarnish her own reputation just to shield that man from accountability. And to be clear, it's not like her reputation wasn't already tarnished before due to corruption and just general buffoonery, but she used to actually pride herself at one point on being tough on human traffickers, only to now be at the center of one of the biggest human trafficking cover-ups in American history. Like, just look at one of the ads that she ran before.
Florida ranks 3rd nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I knew we needed all hands on deck. Businesses and hospitals to spot it, our great law enforcement to stop it, and tougher penalties to punish it. We're taking on Medicaid fraud, pill mills, gangs, and more, and I'll fight to put human trafficking monsters where they belong, behind bars.
Well, that aged like milk. It'd be nice to have that version of Pam Bondi these days, but instead she's doing everything that she can to keep human trafficking monsters from being put behind bars. What a disgrace. It just feels like this is a joke to them. And it proves that we have a 2-tier justice system in this country where the most heinous sex crimes and even crimes against humanity are effectively decriminalized if you have money and power. Meanwhile, if you get caught smoking weed in certain states, they'll throw the book at you. It's just so ridiculous. This isn't a legal system. It's a failed state where a cabal of pedophile elites run the country like the fucking mafia.